understands that there's a very secure position in which they're galloping across the country and the different aspects of that. So I'm going to have Kaylana demonstrate. Just show me what your galloping position is first, and then I'll go over the points that we want to be seeing. So number one, we're out of the saddle, right? We're balanced over our irons. So we have the 2 points of contact are our stirrups, right? And in a galloping position, what I would like to see is that the rider has the ability to have their upper body closer to the neck. So I want to ask you to push your hips back, good, and upper body lower. And to really exaggerate it, I'm going to ask you to put your chin below the horse's mane. So lean all the way over until your chin, yeah, now push your hips back. Good, so hips back further, and lower leg more forward. Oh, there we go. Okay, now we're getting there. Now we're looking more like a jockey. She's really tall, so this is like, it's hard, right? You have to really articulate your angles. I'll let you sit for a moment and we'll go back to it. So that's what I'm going to want my rider to be able to do. I'm going to want their back to be able to be somewhat parallel with the horse's back, right? And in order to do that, you could see how at first when she went to go more forward, her inclination was to get her seat a little bit above the pommel. We don't want that to happen. So we need to be able to explain how to close the hip angle and push the hips back in order to get the chest lower, okay? And if you watch jockeys, that's what they do. So the other part of that is that we want to make sure that there's a real stable balance over the stirrup. I like to explain that I think of the stirrup as more of a platform, and in cross country we're going to have the foot slightly further into the stirrup, and I'm going to think of pressing down a little bit more equally between the toe and the heel rather than just jamming the heel down. Right, so we'll let you stand up again and think about having your foot just a touch further in the stirrup. There you go. Think about pushing down with both your toe and your heel. And we want to try to keep the stirrup leather in line with the girth, right? We don't want it to come behind. That's good there. There you go. Now the hips have to go back. Good. Close that hip angle more. And now see how low you can get. Again, can you put your chin below the neck just for a moment? There you go. Okay. Great. How's that feel?
The other way.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, how does that feel? Does that feel really exaggerated?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the thing is, there are different schools of thought, right? There are different schools of thought about what the galloping position is and what it can be. We see a lot of people that gallop a little bit more just sort of standing up. What I would like you to think is that I don't want riders to be jumping from a galloping position or galloping in a jumping position, right? I want there to be a distinct change so that the next piece that comes into play is preparing for a jump, okay? So we want to have a sense that there is a change in the rider's position when they're preparing for the jump, a change in their position so that there is a change in the horse's balance, right? So we call it a preparatory position, but in the end, it's preparing for a jump, meaning changing the balance. And the riders need to know not only whether or not they changed, but did the horse change? Did they effectively communicate to the horse? So the more we can teach our riders to be in a galloping position, especially as we go up the levels and the range needs to change as far as the different balances we require, the more we can teach the riders to be in a more distinct galloping position, the more obvious that change will be to the horse. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So what is our preparatory position? Well, a lot of that depends on what we're going to jump, okay? So how much we need to change the balance, how much we need to change the speed, and how accurate we need to be in the alignment, in the straightness of the horse, depends on what we're jumping. So you want to be able to say to the rider, okay, are you jumping? What's the face of the jump? Is it ascending or is it vertical, right? What's behind the jump? Is the horse going to get there and be surprised by something? Do they have to suddenly go down a steep slope? Is there water behind it? Is there a ditch behind it, right? And is there a turn behind it, okay? So all of those factors come into play, right? And that's going to change a little bit what it is that we need to do in the rider. So back to your galloping position again. Okay. Good. Think of it, weight a little bit, toe and heel. Push those hips back. And now the first thing I want you to do when we start to think about preparing for a jump is I want you to think about shifting your weight back in the saddle. So even further back in the hips. Good. Good. So you're thinking of shifting your weight back in order to shift the horse's weight back, okay? So that's the first move. That can happen as they're galloping, right? And then opening up and opening your hip angle and increasing how upright you are in your body and how close you get to the saddle is going to depend a little bit. That's where it comes into play. What is it that we're jumping, right? How vertical is the face? How much do we need to come back? Is it a top and down? You can sit down again for a second. So that needs to happen. When does that need to happen, right? All of that needs to be done by the time we're 6 strides out from the jump, so that the rider and the horse have time to assess the jump. Then the rider has a few strides to kind of make up their mind, have their decision made. What's going to be a good choice here, right? Do I need to take one more gear down, right? What is it that I'm going to be jumping? And then hopefully the last 3 strides, the horse can just focus on the jump, and the rider is then in a place where their job is to maintain, right? Doesn't mean they do nothing, means they maintain. So they're ready to react, and they're ready to be able to help the horse out of whatever situation they're coming into, okay? So we want to have that done by 6 strides, the change of balance. Where does it start? Well, that's a conversation you need to have over and over and over again with the students, right? Because that changes so much depending on the horse's training, depending on, where they are in the course. Some horses listen really well at the beginning, not well at the end, right? The end of a long course, they might be getting tired and strung out. You might need to start that 20 strides away. Sometimes 10 strides away is fine. I remember Karen talking to us once, and she said she watched a lot of the footage from Kentucky, and obviously at the upper level, it's very hard sometimes for riders to see, for spectators to see when those riders are making changes. But she was watching at the 5-star level, and she said that on average, those riders' first communication with the horses to change their balance happened 20 strides out, right? So when it looks seamless and it looks like nothing is happening, it's because it started way back there, right? It's because you didn't see it in the last 3 or 4 strides, because it's all done by then. Does that make sense? Okay. So once we've prepared the horse to change the horse's balance, and we've prepared, then we're going to go into what we would consider our jumping position. That might not change much, right, from where they are when they've changed the balance, right? Kind of depends, again, on the horse, on what it is we're jumping. It depends on the rider physique, right? Really tall riders might not want to sit up as much because they have a bit more leverage in their position. Smaller riders might want to be a little bit more upright. But the key to me is that the rider gets closer to the saddle. I want them to be close to the saddle. I want them to be comfortable even when they're galloping cross country, touching the saddle. They don't necessarily have to be deep and heavy in the saddle. We want them to stay moving, but I think that's really important that they become closer to the saddle and feel what it is that's happening underneath them as they go, okay? The 4th position we talk about is the drop position, but we're not going to go into that now because we're hoping that later, maybe the novice horse will do a drop, and we can go into that detail, okay? So, does that make sense? Anyone want to add anything?